like I was saying, so we've got a small group, which is good. We can dig deep. I put a couple of bit of deep thinkers in there. We don't have to follow that thread. What I really want to know is what's going on in your head in terms of your clients and your conversations you have. So I'm just going to read out the stuff that we've got, and just in case you didn't get a chance to get into the B2B backend. So one of them is just leaning. So this morning, maybe this shouldn't have been unexpected to me, but the annual inflation rate, I thought unexpectedly jumped to 2.6%. I should be expecting that because tariffs, price changes, that's going to happen. That's going to cause that to happen. But it came out strange when just last week, the Bank of Canada dropped the interest rate. So it was kind of like, wait a second, we're going in two different directions. The other thing that's volatile in the market right now is just the market itself, the stock market. So it's like the market is kind of like, we got a potential downshift in the economy with inflation coming up. It's not like we've never been there before. It reminded me of times back in 2008. I used to work for a financial services company back then. Went through that, made it. We made it through the pandemic. If you guys remember the 2000, back in the day with the internet drop and whatnot, we've been through all this stuff before, but it still makes everybody in the market, drives up uncertainty, and that usually results in hesitation for clients. So my question to you on that, if you want to tackle it, is what can we do to protect clients from a volatile market, thinking from an operations perspective, right? The other one I threw in there, thinking in that same vein, is what's more important to your clients now, profits or revenue? It's kind of like that chicken and the egg, right? If you're all profit driven, you're not thinking about the revenue that needs to drive the profit. So what if your profit is 20%, but your revenue's way down, right? You still need to drive revenue. But what are your clients asking for right now? Where are their attentions focusing? Because that's where that's the pain that we need to relieve. And Manu had a great point in there. I'm going to read it off. I'm going to let him actually put that comment into his own words here. The last one I put in there is I have a favorite ratio. Mostly, and I'll admit, when I did my MBA, finance and accounting was the most difficult part of the first part of the first term, and it was struggling. And so, but I clung on to this one ratio called revenue per employee, and it's just a really quick snapshot indicator of productivity and efficiency. Manu had a good point on that. I'm going to let him extrapolate on that. So when you respond, to give context, most of us know who you are, but just for the sake of others that are listening or joined in later, give me a one-liner to give context in terms of where you're coming at from the question. You can address these questions or something else that's on your mind, but I really want to know trends and challenges. What's going on in terms of operations for you? I'm going to give Manu the floor. Just because he had a couple of some interesting comments on those questions. So
can I interrupt just quickly?
Sure.
Eden was trying to get in. She needed the link. I sent to the chat on the B2B cohort.
She's there. I see her. She's just not at us. There she is at the bottom left.
Okay, great. All right.
Well, thank you, Linda. I appreciate it. And just on that note, so events, I always create an event in Google Meet, and then I create an event in Heartbeat with the same link. So we should all be joined together. When I invite folks, that are kind of testing out the groups, I'll send them a link to the Google Meet. But everybody's coming in at the same link. So you should trust the events. Once you register to the events, Heartbeat will give you a notification an hour before and 5 minutes before. So once you sign up, you're good to go. So go ahead, Manny.
I mean, I vent all over the place. So basically, you talked about, to refresh my memory, revenue to FTEs, full-time employees. And I said, no, what we got to measure is the ROI or the efficiency of the employees. Was that what happened? Yeah. Okay, great. So I mean, you and I, Richard, we're practically the same age. So we both were studying the same textbooks, and I learned the exact same thing. And right before I left the corporate world, I've only been in Fortune 500 companies. And right before I left, the trend was happening that with all this technology coming in, it was easier to measure output of employees. Whereas before, it was difficult. You can only measure output of what you manufactured. Now, who put how much into that manufactured unit was almost impossible to measure. But now, because of automation and all these tools out there, it's a lot easier. So the trend, Fortune 500 companies now, when they're always firing people every year, it seems, or every twice a year now, they're measuring, okay, this is how much we pay you, but what are you bringing back in return? What is the ROI? 15, 20 years ago, even 30 years ago, people stayed in one company forever because they didn't know how good or bad they were, right? But now they know how good and bad you are. So the leash is very short and they get rid of you very quickly. So that's where I was coming from. So I'm not sure if I really answered the question.
No, it makes sense. And whenever I look at that ratio, I'm using it more as a conversation starter. Two, when I ask that question, I usually get the revenue from the client, which is really helpful from a context of how big they are. And the revenue per employee, you could do it on a company scale in terms of how well you're doing. Like I remember case studies at school, we talk about the banks and they had some ridiculous ratio. It was like $9,000 to 1 for the amount of money they're making on per employee. So it really,
sorry, dollar spend, like for every dollar spent on salaries.
So it's a simple, like take the total revenue, divide by the total number of employees. So you can't really pin who's
doesn't make sense though.
It was like 9,000 per dollar spent on employee, maybe even more than that. I could be short of that.
I think Richard doesn't. I think his revenue per employee depends very much on the industry, and like in manufacturing and distribution and or retail. I don't know if it really matters, but in consulting, advertising, any labor-intensive industry, it's very useful. And generally, if you pay someone $100,000 a year, you have to have revenue at least 250. That's sort of a benchmark. And that's why, like top consulting firms, they can very high numbers, because they have the higher prices or whatever. But overall, I think it's a very good measure in the right industry. With regard to profit versus sales, like this is a time of uncertainty, so you want to have something that's closer to cash. And I mean, cash is the most right now. I think for a lot of people, it's cash because there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
And you want to have something you can turn into cash. So I also think revenue is important, but these days not really the amount of the revenue, but you want to have it to customers that have paid you before, that are big, that are sold, that this is not a time where you have sometimes you can have where you have the choice between a good solid existing customer and maybe a new customer that sounds very promising, but there's a lot of legwork and you don't really know when it's going to happen. This is the kind of environment you might choose the first one.
So for context, for everybody listening, so Henrik's a fractional CFO and Manu CPA, and borderline that you do a lot of CFO support or financial support as well. Manu, if I'm correct, right? Just you guys.
I'm a fractional CFO, so I work with. I've spoken to most people. I've met some new people. I work mostly with smaller companies, startups, scale-ups, B2B, a lot of business services. Yeah.
And Manu, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
So same. I'm gonna forget it. Correct.
Sorry.
I didn't want to just label you with a CPA because you do a little bit more than just the average CPA, right? So
just a quick 30-second spiel on me. I'll make it very short. I spent about 20 years in the Fortune 500 space, like I said. So I worked in various departments. In the past 2 years, I have focusing primarily on cross-border tax, estate planning, corporate taxes, and individual tax.
Perfect. Excellent. So in that, I'm just going to keep the conversation moving around a little bit. So I would say, Rob, I know this is going to be an unusual question, but I think there's a lot of factors in there in terms of like when somebody is with you. I think if I correct me if I'm wrong, you're targeting people that have already acquired HubSpot and they recognize they need support, right? Is there anybody do you work with any clients where you're trying to convince them to invest in the CRM, or is it they already have invested in it? You're just trying to help them make it more user efficient.
Yeah, 70% of our clients have a CRM like HubSpot. The other 30% are migrating to one, but we're not in the business of making the business case for a CRM. It's like they already have to have the need recognized.
So
and how do you go ahead? Go
right?
ahead, Karen.
Sorry, Rob, your focus is on implementation of a CRM. Like are you helping them identify CRMs that they might need to procure?
Sometimes,
Okay.
sometimes 70% is optimizing current HubSpot, 30% is implementing a brand new solution,
Okay.
which is usually HubSpot.
Okay.
So where do you sit in terms of what's the one pain point that draws you in to your conversation with a new client in these type of scenarios?
Do I have to tie it back to the inflation rate question or the profits or revenue?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, like I'm just curious. Like, are you solving for revenue? Like, hey, we want more sales, we want more leads. Are you solving an efficiency, a productivity problem? What's the balance if you're
So
doing
it's
both?
interesting. So my background is marketing and communications. So when we started, we thought all these marketing people who use HubSpot primarily would come to us and be like, help us with HubSpot. Though a lot of those marketers are like, things are going okay for us. It's usually operations people who give us a mandate, operations or sometimes sales people, but usually operations or CEOs, they're like, why am I spending all this money on marketing? And I think many of you talked about ROI. Like, it's like they're doing a bunch of marketing. I don't see how that's impacting close one. And then on the sales team, it's like sales, they can't forecast accurately, and so that's usually the pain point. No cost certainty on the forecasting side. So as a result, it's like an operations person who says, we need to have more data-driven. We need to be able to make data-driven decisions. So let's start to use the tools that we have across our organization to have like a single source of truth is the comment that people talk about a lot. But it's not necessarily, achievable right then and there, as you know, Richard, and probably everybody on this call. It is a, baby steps, something that always you have to aspire to and work collaboratively to do.
Sorry, Rob.
Go ahead, Ryan. No, please go.
Sorry, you made this comment earlier. It was very interesting. You said, I don't sell, they come to me when they're ready to buy. So someone's got to be doing the convincing at some point. So why would that person not take the sale? That's why it kind of like got confusing.
Yeah, no, what I meant was they have to. I mean, you could say this for all our clients, right? Like, if you have to come to for marketing, right? If you have to come to somebody and be like, "Hey, marketing's really good. You really should check it out." That's you're gonna have an uphill battle. So it's people who have already said the status quo is not an option. We're killing ourselves with our current systems like Excel for forecasting, and we now need to invest in something to help us get to the next level, to help us scale, to help us improve efficiencies. And so I guess because we are the implementation arm of that, if they don't know that they want to up-level their software, then they're not going to need help with implementation.
Because like the thing is, like the general public, I guess in my industry, we all know you got to file your taxes once a year, right? And then other services that accountants, and I'm sure Henry can speak to this as well, other services that we provide, the general public has no idea. They're completely clueless, and they won't know until a guy like Henrik or I step out and say, by the way, this, and this can help you, and here's the ROI, and here's the savings, and here's whatever. So I'm sure like a lame person really wouldn't know the intricacies of, I mean, there's gotta be some selling at some point, no?
I think, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but you sound like, I know people that deal with NetSuite, which is not, I mean, it's an accounting program. But then other people get sold NetSuite, and then it's so big and so cumbersome, and they don't know what to do with it, and they pay thousands a year, and they've already spent a lot of money implementing. They need someone to basically help them work, to help it work, optimize it, and it sounds like you're doing the same thing for HubSpot. It's just someone sold it, but now they want to make it work.
Yeah, and I'd say unlike like ERP is a great example of that as well. Like, unlike those big systems, HubSpot is pretty self-serve. A lot of people can use it to a certain point, but there's like another level on top of that where it's like best practices, shared insights, reporting where they need help.
I think what I would say HubSpot is because my client uses HubSpot, and I think Rob, you and I have had this conversation, is that there is the implementation, because HubSpot initially is free, right, as a CRM, but then as your business grows and as your needs with the tool increases, you end up needing to upgrade and upgrade and upgrade and upgrade. So HubSpot as a tool is very powerful CRM, but I think what Rob's business, and my understanding of it is correct, is that when your business grows to a certain point where, kind of like an ERP, like an NetSuite, because my other client, my client also owns a related company. It's really about how to take the team of people and make sure that they're actually properly using HubSpot to its fullest capabilities.
Yeah.
So because there's a marketing, not a marketing cloud, but like a marketing section, and then there's a sales section, there's a customer support section, and it brings all of that together. But the central source of truth starts with your record. That's what I spend a lot of time doing with my client, right? It's making sure that your customer data or the prospect data or whatever the data is entered correctly. And so I'm guessing that what you are finding, Rob, with your clients is they may be different, salespeople are doing this, marketing people are doing this, customer support people are doing this, but they're not coming together holistically within. So you guide them on how to really fully leverage the tool.
That's good. Yeah, you're hired.
Okay, goody.
I could jump in a little bit. You guys mentioned ERPs, HubSpot, and whatnot. What you'll find is, and Henrik, I know you'll agree with this, the ERP comes with all kinds of modules, right? They definitely have a CRM. They have an HR module, have the accounting, financial modules, they have the warehousing and manufacturing. Where I've heard a lot of conversations. So I'll give you an example. One company I was dealing with, the marketing company brought in HubSpot, but they were mandated to a certain type of ERP that their customers used because they sold into really popular retailers. I'm trying really hard to avoid names here. So then they came to the questions. Well, their ERP has a CRM within it. What do we do? Because HubSpot prices will increase. They do get expensive the more you use it. So they needed some help. And I'm sure, Rob, you get into these situations as well. Help me justify the software. Help me pick the right choice. That's where I've had a lot of conversations. So a lot of smart ERPs have really good connections, APIs, call them like a handshake, into other software systems to make those choices less painful. It's like, you like HubSpot? You need our ERP. Let's let them work together until you, and let's push that decision down the road a little bit, right? So I think there's constantly a question. You mentioned the operations versus like, we've invested in this. I have to address, so I have to come back with a return on investment. It's difficult to measure a lot of everything that system's doing, because if you got brand awareness, other things in there that measure to goodwill, which is even difficult from an accounting perspective until you're really ready to sell or price your company. Like, what is that value back? I think we're kind of start dancing around that a little bit. I'm going to push it onto Linda a little bit. Linda does processes and whatnot. So, and I think Linda's a little bit agnostic in terms of things. What can you share with this kind of scenario, Linda? Not to throw anything on you. You can move into a more comfortable direction, but just let me hear your perspective on it.
Well, I always look at what is the business problem we're trying to solve. So whether that's revenue or streamlining process and the time that it's taking, customer experience, what is the business problem? What do we need to do? So where we often are not always dealing with companies that can afford ERP, the full scale one software that does it all. There are a huge number of companies that are existing on off-the-shelf software to cover the multiple different areas that need to be covered. So when that happens, you now have process, software, and people intersecting, and that's where stuff drops through the holes. So that's where I tend to come in. I'm, other than being a QuickBooks Advanced Pro Advisor, and I can help people on QuickBooks, it's more about what do we need to do to make your business work? What is it? How is it affecting you? So like, don't fix stuff if it isn't broken. If you're using two different pieces of software and there happens to be overlap, okay, at some point, maybe we want to move it over to one piece, but but don't break what isn't broken. And then if there's a revenue issue with that, okay, then how do we look at safely migrating over? And what does it mean? What are the changes? So that's sort of where I get involved, and I get very much involved with the people side of it as well, because the best system doesn't always work for the people that are using it. So I often help people that have software, they've paid for software, they've got it, a couple of people have adopted it and they're loving it. And then there's a bunch of staff that are like, they're still using their old thing, almost shamefully and in secret. They don't want to use the new software. So I will go in and talk to people. What is it? What is getting in the way? What is it you need? What is it not answering, or what is it you're not comfortable with, right? And so dealing with that. So by resolving those kinds of issues, which are very real people and process issues, we get to the bottom of the business problem, which is either time, revenue, or something else. So I don't really pull in the politics of what's going on and what the best system is, because the best system is the one that works.
Can I ask you?
I love it. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Just because we've never met, Linda, is your business more focused on helping businesses establish or figure out the processes that are working or not working based on a business problem that the company is having, and then, because we've just had this conversation about tech, and then looking at the solutions, the software or the applications that they have in-house to understand whether they're actually, the software, the tools are actually meeting the needs versus the other way around. You're not trying to software.
I'm not aligned with any particular piece of software. I will say I'm a QuickBooks Advanced Pro Advisor, but I will recommend what is required for somebody, and that might not be QuickBooks. It's not the best software out there. It's just one of the more popular ones. And then if people are using QuickBooks, doing their own bookkeeping on their own, or they want to bring that in-house, I can help them do that so they can do it on their own, because I know that software. But I will help people adopt a software that I don't know the software. I will help people integrate two pieces of software that I don't know the software, but because I know software, I understand what questions to ask and how to make those things work together. If they know an expert, I will say right up front, if you know somebody who knows this, talk to them, because they're going to be an expert on it. But really, I'm all about solving business problem and streamlining business process.
Linda, quick question, off topic here. If I had some people that needed to be trained on QuickBooks, would you be able to provide that service?
Yes. It's the only software that I'll say I'll train people on.
Okay.
The rest of the software is all about, okay, what is it that you need and process? But QuickBooks, doesn't matter what level of QuickBooks it is.
Okay, good to know. All right, thank you.
So Linda, I'd encourage you to maybe even go beyond. So I used to teach back in the early. I used to teach at Harvard College and Sheridan College, and the technology was all web programming. Technology was moving at such a fast pace. I was often a chapter ahead of the students. So sometimes, when you know what to look for, it's a little faster for us to train, and then and train the basics. It doesn't software agnostics, basically, right? Agnostic. So I would say, yes, I will go in. I may have to investigate the software, but I'll certainly make sure that your team is using it. I've even gone so far to set up Google Classroom and then find a couple of super users in there and just grab little snippets, because there's lots of how-tos on a lot of the supporting software. Get them using, just getting everybody feeling comfortable with the software. What people quickly realize is everybody's enveloped in software, but they're still afraid of it, but they use it every day. They don't realize how comfortable they actually are with it. I'm going to pass it on to Daniel. Daniel, this is all around your neck of the woods. Any thoughts on that? Anything you want to share?
I just know with a lot of people, they'll use any number of different CRMs. So there's Zoho, there's Odoo, there's for like my industry, we use professional services automation software, which is like ERP systems for managed services providers.
Okay.
And there's people have mentioned there's NetSuite. NetSuite may or may not be the best product for CRM though, because it's so clunky and slow.
Yep.
Yes.
And so sales people probably wouldn't have the patience to use a CRM in it. And then there's funnels, there's Quoter, there's Zementum. Those are all quoting softwares that have a CRM built into them. So there's overlap between those and your other systems that include a CRM. And then, of course, there's also open source software like vTiger, which you can run on your own hardware. If somebody's trying to bootstrap their business, that might be a better idea, because if they got old hardware sitting around, they can just run that on Linux and they don't have to pay for it.
And sorry, Daniel, what do you do?
Yeah, I was going to ask the question. I haven't met before.
So I do IT services, I do networking, I do software developments, and I also do fiber internet.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. That's great perspective. I like where you and Linda come from, and I appreciate Rob. Rob drew a line in the sand, and he doesn't have to have that conversation about the software. Like, they've already adopted a software. Now it's a conversation about how to use that software well. Am I correct in saying that, Rob? Maybe do.
Generally speaking, it's kind of like with all work. Like, if I really like someone and the opportunity is good, we'll do pipe drive, we'll do other things, but generally it's a full-time job staying on top of HubSpot alone.
Yeah, 100%. That is the tricky spot. It's like, how do you keep track of everything versus being a specialist in one?
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention one other one too, Microsoft Dynamics Business Central.
Yeah.
That's an ERP system where the price point is within.
Lost you there.
Excellent.
Little glitch
Daniel,
there.
you're on mute. And we can hear.
Yeah, it broke up a little bit. There you go. Switching headphones. I key on the fly right there.
Troubleshooting.
Hey, Eden, how are things? Your new class, your new course went off the ground. Have you got anything to share about that? Like, what are you using for the? I'm just more curious in terms of what software you're using. Not to push you in any direction, but have you figured that out? Or
What
is it going to be
software
more
we're using for what
for your
part of
course?
it? Okay, so I'm actually not doing it. As much as I'm a digital person, you're looking at the software. I'm using Zoom.
Nice.
I'm using Canva, where there's downloadable materials, and I'm using Dubs Auto just in terms of contracts and reminders. And I moved my payments successfully over there, and it has been great because now I'm more automated. But I'm in a totally different place. Like, I do not work on operations with big CRMs for clients unless that's not true. If I'm working with a client that has a CRM and we're involved, yes, I've worked with HubSpot, I've worked with Pipedrive, and a bit of Salesforce, etc. It's not our, it's not our happy place. It's not where we say we are going to be. And in 2025, if anybody were to ask us, I would call upon somebody else to help, like my friend Rob, who's right here, for example. So yeah,
Eden,
I'm more here for interest.
We haven't met Eden. So what do you do? What's your kind of?
Oh, I do a lot of different things, but as Dorothy Vernon Brown, who's also part of this group, I believe, or she is still part of the group, says diversifying is all about your business right now, and everything relates. So I have a digital marketing agency.
Okay.
I am also a certified coach.
Okay.
As a result of the digital marketing, 12 years ago, I was asked to co-create a course at the U of T School of a certificate program, at the School of Continuing Studies at U of T. And I also helped to migrate part of that program from in-class to online. And I also do other advising in the higher education field. So I do a lot of work in the online course and e-learning space for clients of all sizes. So if you're, a small business looking to bring some of your IP into an online format that you want to sell, not these little like snake oil people that I'm going to make you $5 million if you sign up for my course, but I'm talking people like us who are reaching new audiences through building online courses. We do that, and we can do everything from initial strategy right through to go to market, including the development, or we can just take your content and develop it, or we can just do the advisory piece. So do a lot in that area. And I'm also a certified leadership and exec coach as of last year. So I'm building that out as well. And what Richard's referring to is because I'm a digital marketer with higher education experience, and I'm a coach. I understand where coaches' heads are at. And I know from my personal experience and from talking to other coaches, people finish these programs. They think they're going to coach either as a side hustle, or they have a small business and they don't know how to promote it, or they decide to switch jobs or lose their job and want to lean on their coaching full time. And they don't know how to create an online presence. So I've just launched a masterclass in real time with me. That's why I say it's lowish tech, because it's in Zoom. A lot of it's done on Zoom in real time, and that one is done through a coaching lens. And I'm also going to launch a part 2, which is for solopreneurs and small businesses that want to learn how to create their online presence as well and build awareness.
I honestly think the low tech as a first step. You got to get the processes figured out. You got to get the people using it, and then understand where the problems are going to come from before you go and invest in the tech. I think that's the smartest way to go.
Well, and I've done a pilot and we iterated, but at the same time, I think part of the value I'm bringing right now is the non-scalability, because it's like an Ask Me Any. People have me right there. They have each other right there. It's very collaborative. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I don't know that program, I don't know if it will go to fully online or not. I may keep it relatively low tech. We'll see.
I like it. So Manu, I'm going to ask you. You have one other comment in there that I wanted you to build on. It was relating to my question: profits versus revenue. How can you help accomplish the goal? And you said, the challenge is twofold. I don't want to give the whole thing away. I just want to give you a little bit to get you remembering what you said. Client needs to be top line in order to invest in growth. Frustration is the businesses are reluctant to invest. That ringing a bell, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah. Just before I go to there, the geek inside me had to just check some KPIs. So I went to TD, our largest bank. In 2024, per employee, they generated $560,000 per head.
I think I dropped a zero off. It should have been 900,000. It was a stat I was quoted in a strategy class. So
okay.
It sounded too ridiculous to be true. So I think I dropped a zero off of it.
560K per employee. Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, because the target that we had in manufacturing, it's close to 200, 250. So this is significantly higher. But anyways, coming back to that. So the thing is, it's twofold. We all want to grow our sales, right? And if someone says they don't want to, they're just lying. We all want to grow our sales. But what a lot of entrepreneurs, especially new entrepreneurs, what they fail to recognize is that you can't grow your sales without investing a little bit into the business. And the tricky part is, and this is where a lot of entrepreneurs fail, is that they don't know where to invest. And where they end up cutting is the last place where there should be cutting, and that's your marketing and your finances, right? That's where you should be putting in your money, but it's the first thing they cut out, which is why most businesses fail. And then secondly, then the catch-22 is that if you don't invest in these two areas, your top line won't grow, right? So now they're complaining my line isn't growing, but they're also complaining that my costs are too high because they're spending money on useless activities. So that's been my biggest challenge in trying to get people heading in the right direction when they're running their businesses, but they just don't want to listen for some reason. I don't know. If you guys have had more success in convincing people, I'd love to hear your strategies.
I think we all when what you do, how far it's away from the revenue, the more difficult the convincing or the more difficult the education you got to do. And when you could figure out where the pain points are that kind of point in that direction to support what you're talking about, you could kind of, it's like a doctor listening for symptoms when they're meeting the client, right? It's like, okay, these are the symptoms I'm looking for that relate to bigger problems. So the other day I had a leak in my kitchen sink leak, and all my friends told me, Rich, you can fix it yourself. Do this, this, this. Of course, I went to try and do it. I broke the pipe, and all of a sudden, now I had a flood.
It cost you more.
It cost me more. Exactly. And so the plumber comes in, and I'm trying to nail him on a call because I'm trying to put a lid on this sucker, right? So that we get in the same situations. And his answers were, I don't know until I look. The first thing I'm going to do is going to cost this much. It's an investigation. It's going to tell me X, Y, and Z, right? It's the same. I feel like it's the same challenge that we have on marketing is not, it's related to sales. It's attached to sales, but it's a difficult attribution model to prove. And there's a length of time for it to prove.
It's an
Finance has the
investment.
same
It's an
sort of challenge.
investment. It's an
Yeah,
investment.
exactly. Go ahead, Karen.
So I wanted to build on what you just said, Manu, because I'm living this right now with my client in terms of the revenue part. But I actually had a conversation with an old friend of mine who is a lawyer in New York, and he's in the process of building out a fractional general legal counsel practice as part of a subset of his, like another line of business within his company. And he said the same thing. He says, when you're like in his case, legal is expensive, right? But, you know, his struggle has been, you know, getting a small, medium-sized business owner to realize the need to have some kind of legal representation or legal counsel proactively, as opposed to after the fact. And I know you guys are CFOs, so I'll say this also. My husband's cousins used to be, he's retired, but he's a fractional CFO. It's the same thing. He runs into all these kinds of small, medium-sized companies who, again, get into a situation where they've just created a freaking mess for themselves. Oh, sorry, I forgot the recording. They created a mess for themselves, and then they bring the CFO or the fractional CFO in way too late.
Yeah.
And I think maybe from a positioning perspective, it's really in the case of a CFO or a cost that, like a business function that needs to be proactive versus reactive, is really just highlighting the potential risk or the downside of not being proactive with some things. Just like your, you know, what you were talking about with your
Yeah. Like Linda made a comment earlier, and I'm not gonna lie, Linda, I think you're an amazing person, but the hair behind my neck went up. You said you coach clients, entrepreneurs on how to run QBO. And I've seen those clients where, you know, a person like you who's an expert at QBO walks in, teaches them, they remember 50% of it if they're lucky. And then, you know, 2 years later, they got the CRA in there. It's a disaster. And now the audit's going on. It's costing them 3-4 times as much had they just gotten a proper bookkeeper to do the bookkeeping for them at $500 a month, right?
The biggest struggle with people is the number of times I have seen this, where it's like, work with me before you get started. Make sure you're doing it correctly. Know how to find those mistakes. 9 times out of 10, I get a call when it's tax time and the stuff's not working and it's too late. And it's like, is that not, I was listening to Karen saying this, and it's like, is that not human nature? Is that not the same as what people do with their health? We all know what we need to do, but what percentage of people don't do it? Yeah. And so this, we're talking about human nature. You've got to have enough comfort in the business and confidence to say, I'm willing to spend this proactively. And there are very few people that do that, either for themselves or for their business. I have one client right now, just incredible. They're financial investors, they're private, and he is investing in the people to adopt his software. Hey, this guy's really not doing very well in his process, and before I get rid of him, I want to just see if there's anything we can do. Well, how many people actually invest in that? How many people spend the time? And I see it all the time, exactly what you're saying. And if they've done it properly and spent the time up front, that reconcile tells them exactly whether they're on or not. They just won't do it. They're afraid of it. It's like, oh my God, let me teach you how to do the reconcile properly so that you catch the stuff the first month, not 12 months later or 3 years later.
Well, and I think it is like you pointed out, like, I mean, ego. So because I think like many people feel they can do it themselves, right? And I think that's the struggle, because again, if you're a smaller business, you're struggling, either you're struggling or you're just trying to find ways to save money, and you have to, it's almost like they have to be burned once for the light bulb to go off and go, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. And, you know, realize that, right? I would say I'm a fractional CMO. So on my side, my experience, because I've met most of you, but not all of you. So what I do is I work with, I was interested in this operations meeting because I actually wanted to meet some of you guys on the process side. So what I do is I work with startups to help them grow. But what my focus is not so solely as a fractional CMO. I really been focused on CEOs who feel stuck because their business lacks structure, process, strategy to build something that's scalable. And so the startups I've worked with have been all over the place, but fundamentally what's missing is that process that you do, Linda, where they're not necessarily understanding, they've got a great idea, they've got a great product, and what the first thing they do is hire a salesperson. So going back to your conversation about, sales versus profit, I mean, but companies need sales, and I had a long meeting this morning with our team about the fact that our team isn't, the sales isn't there, right? About the economic uncertainty. So one of my clients, what they do is outsourcing, business process outsourcing, based in the Philippines. So in the economy can be an opportunity for us to tap in to grow that market, because you can outsource certain core functions, back office functions or front office functions through companies like ours a lot more cost effectively. But if you're comfortable with the sort of like the outsource model. But I guess what I would say for, those of us who are struggling, I almost feel like there's a lot of education we have to do to help them understand the value each of us collectively do in a business function, right? Within a business, whether it's sales, marketing, or whatever. But CEOs, I find, I don't know if you guys find it, particularly the marketing folks, marketing is an investment. You can't just hire a salesperson and just expect them to generate revenue. I've had so many conversations with the clients, that my startup clients, and I've said, you have to build the brand. You have to establish your operational processes. You need to understand the customer journey, how the customers come to you, and what the sales cycle is, and what their buying process is. If you don't understand any of that, then you're just wasting money left, right, and center, in my case, running random marketing tactics, or hiring a team of salespeople thinking they're just gonna go out there and sell your product, but you haven't provided them with any kind of anything to say, right? Or in you guys' case, it's, do they have the financial sort of is everything set up financially, operationally, so that the marketing, the sales, the different business functions can actually function together to grow and scale the company.
So Karen made a very interesting point about educating clients. Now, all of us, the 9 of us, are all subject matter experts in slightly different domains.
Yeah.
How could we use our synergies to work as one?
Yeah.
And, kind of help the client and help ourselves ultimately?
I think, Manu, you're already tackling that. I'm going to go back to you in a second. You're already kind of tackling that. You're a couple of times you and I were talking about accounting type things. Oh yeah, I've answered that question before. It's on YouTube. So you're putting it's like what Aiden's doing with her course, right? The course really makes it more economical to get knowledge from somebody, or to acquire knowledge, right? So you it's like, I was going to ask you guys earlier, where do you step in on that educational forefront? Because it's really expensive to take that journey. It's like Rob waits till they get to a certain point, then he comes in. Where will you do the education? But I like what you've done, Manu. Is like, you know what? I've answered this question 50 times. I'm going to record my answer. I'm going to post it. I'm going to refer back. So you're kind of educating them without, any more time. But that's one thing. Eden, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, from the example, Richard and Rob, you're familiar with it. What we did with, Spodek & Combe is a Women Business Enterprise certified business through Women Business Enterprise Canada. And what we did was, there was a group of us who were in the B2B professional services, and we decided we wanted to start with a webinar, and it may be the first of several, or it may be the only one. And we did one, and we had 5 women who own businesses, all different sizes. Some of us employ people, some of us are solopreneurs. We're all in different industries, represented pretty much across Canada. And we wanted to get on the radar. We understood that the members of Women Business Enterprise are the larger corporate and enterprises who want to hire us because they want diversity. However, they get a little nervous hiring smaller businesses because it's riskier. So they want to see that we can get along together and collaborate. So we took a topic that was universal for all of us, and we launched our first webinar around International Women's Day. And it was an opportunity for each of us to talk about the issue and interject a bit from the lens of our discipline. The beauty of it is what we've been able to do. There was a lot of content we did leading up to it. There is now a plethora of content that we have as a result of it. We're writing magazine articles, we're writing blog post articles, they're being published by other people. We had media coverage. Somebody in BD, there were a few people from BDC there. One of them sent it to his contact in Poland. Like, we are now doing a case study. We're going to pitch it to be on a panel at the annual conference in November. This only happened a week and a half ago. Somebody in the group who's at West was already asked to moderate 2 panels for 2 different organizations, one of which is paying. So my point is, if you create a webinar and you record it and we talk about, maybe it's like the business guide to all of our services. I don't know, I'm just throwing out a random idea. And you invite people, and we all have our own networks that we can invite, and everybody comes. We do it on someone's Zoom that's set up to do webinars. You can get an email list that you can collect, that then you can send them the recording. You can send them the recording whether they attend or not. You ask for their permission to email them. We did a follow-up survey saying, and Rob and Richard, you may have seen it, that asked people what they're interested in, if they're interested in any of the services we offer, if they're interested in following up, and it gave our contact information. And then we have this video of the hour-long webinar that we now can slice and dice, and have already started to do so that it's giving us a lot of content that we can either, take our own sound bites, or take sound bites into different clips to show to show the group or show us individually, and use that as an education piece for a long time. Like, we can really extend that and repurpose all that content. So that type of model could lend itself really well, I think, for the B2B cohort. Just a thought.
So I record all of these, and a lot of that is like, because I've heard even my one-on-ones, I hear so much. It's like, oh, people got to know this person. This person soft. You guys all storytell. And what the example, Eden, is, this is just a different type of publication mechanism of good storytelling, right? So I'm going to pick the topics every time we meet. I highly encourage you guys to throw your own topics in there, because we will talk about it. You will have sound bites in here. And this, I've just publicly put it on a YouTube channel. It's my YouTube channel. I'm happy to give that clip to you. You can post it on your own YouTube channel. I think this is an opportunity. If you don't have the time and the resources or the finances to set up to do what Eden's done, like that, I think it's obviously a huge return on investment, but an investment that had to be made first before you did it. You're welcome to use this as a venue to do that. But I really want, like, my goal with 2025 is to hear more from more people. I think it was extremely valuable having that one speaker present. I think we got to know a lot about that one person, but I just felt it was too slow in that we're only getting through 12 people. So you guys tell me what you want to talk about through the questions. I will always add a little salt and pepper in there to get a conversation going. And then you have full access to this video. I'll give you the full recording. You can clip out the parts that you want to clip out, and you're welcome to use it in whatever manner you're using it. Because I think when we work together and we try to, we're uncovering, like, I've learned a lot more about Linda today. I've learned a lot more about Menu, and I'm kicking myself for having earlier conversations with the financial side of things. But I think we all struggle at, as a small business, these challenges that we're frustrated with our clients. I'm making those same mistakes as a small business myself, right? And back of my neck, your neck is here. I don't have any hair. I just have little tricklets of sweat back here that I'm like, oh man, maybe I made a mistake here, but I'm learning about it. So what I want to do is get your expertise, whatever domain of expertise you have, and get it out there so others can benefit from it. But more importantly, so others can have a longer conversation with you.
Richard,
any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Manu.
Yeah, well, sorry, Richard, you're very selfless in promoting others, and it's just beautiful nowadays because people don't do that. Can you take the last 6 minutes and just talk about yourself and tell us what you do?
Yeah, so I think Linda and I, there's a lot of, and Sanjay could argue, there's a lot of similarities. We all come from that MarTech technology world. I'm a digital transformation consultant, but I'm also incredibly frugal. I just look for ways to support people with processes. I will support them on whatever software they're using. And the thing, and Linda described this really well, it reminds me of a client that I had. sometimes it's not the software. Sometimes there's an intimidation factor, but I will go in and interview every single person in that organization to find the root of the problem. And because I'm frugal, I'll find the most economical solution to it. And sometimes, unfortunately, it is you need a new software, right? Sometimes you purchase the software that's 5 years in advance for yourself and you've overspent, and I could bring that down. And with that, it simplifies a lot of the tasks that everybody's using that software. So really, since I was a kid, I've always been interested in what's a really smooth customer feeling process. You guys are like that. You do business with certain tailors, do business with certain restaurants because you love the experience that you've been with there. I just happen to be really excited about that when I see somebody doing a full end-to-end service from the first time you meet a person to the invoice you get, and it's really exciting. It's really successful. I've always been into that, and I just use software as a mechanism to try and make sure that system works really well. Sometimes it's nothing to do with software. Sometimes you get away with spreadsheets and doing it manually like Eden's done. But I'm all about giving a great client experience and helping clients do that for themselves. And it becomes particularly important as you're growing. And we talk so we've got 9 people on this call right now. It's pretty manageable, right? You get 20, it's a different conversation. When you get 50, it's even more different. So the more people you add to the scenario, the more complicated that solution is. And you really do need people to come in and say, let me help you out. Let me help you sort that out. Sometimes it's not throwing another staff member at it to solve the problem. Sometimes it's about fixing the system you got and working with people you got, the resources and the finances you have. I hope that makes sense. Any questions on that? Linda, you want to throw in a 2 cents on that? Because you and I are sort of in that same world. I'd ask Sanjay as well.
Yeah. Well, we haven't heard from Sanjay.
Sanjay, are you in a place where you can talk? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk, Sanjay? Can you relate?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, definitely. I think the only thing I could really add to that, and from my experience of working in enterprise for over 10 years doing data analytics and whatnot, is the data aspect of it. And I'm sure that having like small to mid-sized business clients, we can all relate that data is sometimes the issue when it comes to taking action, right? Like you want to be able to take action. You want to be able to uncover some of the gaps, and you can do a gap analysis and all that. But you really have to have data as the backbone in order to make decisions, and also to measure how well those decisions are impacting the business. So like, yeah, sales is your common metric, but there's so many other metrics that can be measured. We talk about KPIs, and if we don't do a good job of setting the baseline and having the data structures, and that's like where I tend to practice the most in terms of consulting, is setting up the foundation for data structures. So that way, when it comes to, okay, here's this process, SOPs there, everything's there, but how do you know that that SOP is being followed 6 months from now, a year from now? So I like to create like a little scorecard, and so the scorecard will tell you if the SOP is being followed or not.
I think, Sanjay, we should chat because a huge amount of my background is understanding data, and where I work with people is it's great to track stuff, but how are you going to use it? And it's great to store data, but how are you going to retrieve it? And understanding the structure of data, which could be as simple as where you put it in naming conventions. It could be as simple as your chart of accounts, what's needed and what's needed for business decisions. Keep them to what actually makes sense, and getting that information and translating from tech speak to business speech, huge part of what I'm doing in helping people. So, but you and I should chat.
Yeah, well, I'll reach out.
I
that
think
part that you mentioned is critical, because that's what I did with the executives at Bell. Like they needed to see what the data translated into a deck, right? Like they don't want to see numbers. They want to see the qualitative data, not the quantitative data.
Visible, it's visual. It's what does it mean? Because a lot of business people, very good at what they do, they're not very good at numbers. So you need to be able to see it. You need to
Yeah.
know what it means. And that's why I always break it down into what's the business problem we're trying to solve. And I am not the person to help you grow your business, which is why I sit between business coach and tech support. The coach that tells you how to grow your business helps you with, this is what you need to do next. The CFOs are, this is what it means and where you're going to go with it. You need to change things. I'm looking at that implementation piece of, okay, does that answer that question? Always go back to that. Are we answering that question? Is this helping you?
This is a great one, guys. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you guys for taking the time to share. I think we owe each other a call, a little one-on-one. There's a few I heard you guys mentioning. I look forward to seeing that. Anybody in the Hamilton area, I just want to put a prop up. I'm coming down to Hamilton tomorrow from 4 to 5:30 to meet. Vanessa's hosting a meetup in person. If you're in the Toronto area, Ryan's got another meetup happening. So don't forget to look at the events and, make sure you're not driving 2-3 hours to go to an event. Find one nearest you.